1 month after the reactor crisis, Admiral Kehoe received an official message from Galactic Council Command. The message ordered him to transfer the human prisoner, Bioram, to maximum security prison facility Alpha 9 for advanced interrogation, and Kehoe stared at the message for a long time. Alpha 9 was a terrible place where prisoners were kept in isolation and subjected to painful experiments. The scientists there would take Bioram apart piece by piece, trying to understand how human technology worked, but the Admiral knew that torturing Bioram would not give the Council the information they wanted. Humans did not work through force and fear. They worked through friendship and cooperation. Studying a frightened human would teach the galaxy nothing useful about human capabilities. Kehoe called a meeting with his senior staff commander Hyenwu, Dr. Soyoung, chief engineer Minho, and even Captain Taemin gathered in the conference room. Everyone looked worried because they had all received copies of the transfer order. Dr. Soyoung spoke first. She said that moving Bioram to Alpha 9 would be the biggest mistake the Galactic Council had ever made. The human had saved their lives and improved their station beyond recognition. He was not a threat to be contained, but a teacher to be treasured. Minho agreed completely. His engineering teams had learned more from Bioram in 1 month than they had learned in years of formal training. The human approach to technology was revolutionary and could benefit every species in the galaxy. Commander Hyenwu said his security teams had also learned valuable lessons from Bioram. The human had shown them better ways to resolve conflicts and keep peace among the diverse alien crews. Everyone on the station was getting along better than ever before. Even Captain Taemin, who had been most suspicious of Bioram, now defended the human prisoner. Taemin said Bioram had earned the respect and friendship of everyone on Station Omega 7. Him to be tortured would be wrong and wasteful. Admiral Kehoe listened to his staff and realized they all felt the same way. The human had become an important part of their community, not as a prisoner but as a friend and teacher who made everyone's life better. Kehoe made a decision that could end his career. He called Bioram to his office and showed him the transfer order. Then he asked the human what he wanted to do. Bioram could choose to go to Alpha 9 or Kehoe could try to find another solution. Read the message carefully and smiled sadly. He said he understood that the Galactic Council was afraid of humans because they did not understand them. Fear made people do cruel things even when they were trying to protect themselves. The human said he was willing to go to Alpha 9 if that would help his new friends avoid trouble with their government, but he hoped there might be another way that would benefit everyone. Kehoe asked what Bioram had in mind. Bioram explained that humans had been preparing for first contact with galactic civilization for many years. They had watched and learned about different alien species and cultures. Humans wanted to join the galactic community as friends and partners, not as conquerors or subjects. Human said his mission had been to make peaceful contact and demonstrate human capabilities through helpfulness rather than force. If the Galactic Council wanted to study humans, they could do it through cooperation rather than imprisonment. Realized that Bioram was offering something incredible. The human was willing to serve as an ambassador between humanity and the galaxy. He could teach alien civilizations about human technology and philosophy while learning about their cultures. In return, the Admiral made his choice. He called his senior staff back to the conference room and asked them to make the most important decision of their careers. Were they willing to risk their positions to do what was right for the galaxy? Single officer agreed that Bioram should not be sent to Alpha 9. Dr. Soyoung suggested they could request that Station Omega 7 be converted into a research facility for studying human-alien cooperation. They could make it seem like they were following orders while actually protecting Bioram. Minho offered to write technical reports, showing how human engineering methods could improve galactic technology. If the Council understood the practical benefits, they might be more interested in cooperation than imprisonment. Commander Hyenwu said his security reports could emphasize how human conflict resolution methods had improved station morale and efficiency. The Council always wanted better ways to manage diverse populations. Captain Taemin suggested they invite other stations to send representatives to observe the human-alien cooperation project. If enough facilities requested human advisors, the Council might establish an official program. Admiral Kehoe began writing the most important report of his career. He detailed everything Bioram had taught them and accomplished on Station Omega 7. He requested that the station be redesignated as the first human-alien cooperation research center. The report explained that humans represented a completely new approach to technology and social organization that could benefit every species in the galaxy. Instead of studying them as prisoners, the Council should embrace them as teachers and partners. Kehoe sent copies of the report to every Admiral and Council member he had ever served with. He also sent it to the commanders of 12 other space stations who had been complaining about technical problems and crew conflicts within days. Kehoe received responses from commanders across the galaxy. Many of them reported similar mysterious improvements in their systems that had started when human ships were detected in their regions. The evidence was overwhelming that humans were already helping the galaxy. 3 weeks later, Kehoe, we've received new orders from the Galactic Council. Station Omega 7 was officially redesignated as Cooperation Center 1 and Bioram was appointed as the first human cultural and technical advisor to the Galactic Fleet. The orders also mentioned that 17 other stations had requested human advisors and that the Council was beginning negotiations with Earth for a formal alliance. The galaxy was finally ready to learn from humanity. Instead of fearing, Thembarum accepted his new position. With characteristic humility and grace, he said he was honored to represent his species and looked forward to helping his alien friends build a better future together. Da Soyoung was appointed as the first director of human studies and began developing programs to train alien scientists in human cooperation methods. Minho became chief of human-alien engineering integration and started writing manuals on human technology. Philosophy commander Hyanwu was promoted to admiral and given command of the new cooperation fleet that would spread human-alien partnership throughout the galaxy. Captain Taemin became the first alien officer to be invited to visit Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. And the day the new assignments were announced, BRM stood in the station's main observation deck looking out at the stars. He was joined by all his friends who had become his colleagues in building a better galaxy. Admiral Kehoe asked BRM if he missed being a simple engineer on a small research ship. The human smiled and said he had never stopped being an engineer. He was just working on a bigger project now, helping two different types of civilization learn to work together. As more human ships arrived at the station and alien delegates came to learn about cooperation, Bioram knew that his mission had succeeded beyond his greatest hopes. The galaxy was finally ready to discover that the strongest technology of all was friendship. The former prisoner had become the bridge between worlds and the teacher who would help the galaxy learn that working together was always better than fighting alone. In the end, the aliens had not captured a human, they had been adopted by one. 2 weeks after Bioram's arrival, the worst thing that could happen to a space station. It started happening. The main power reactor that kept station Omega-7 running began making strange noises and showing warning lights. Chief Engineer Minho ran diagnostics, but the results were terrible. The reactor core was failing and there was no way to fix it. The backup power systems were old and unreliable. They could keep the station running for maybe 5 days before everything shut down. After that, the life support would fail and everyone would die in the cold darkness of space. Admiral Kehoe called an emergency meeting with all department heads. The nearest friendly station was 12 days away. Even at maximum speed, their communication systems could not reach that far, and no rescue ships were scheduled to pass through this region for months. Minho explained that they had tried everything their manuals suggested. The reactor was simply too old and had been pushed too hard for too many years. The alien technology was powerful, but it was not designed to adapt when things went wrong. It either worked perfectly or it failed completely. Da Soyoung suggested they ask Bioram for advice. The human had fixed every broken device she had brought him. Maybe he could understand what was wrong with the reactor. All the department heads looked at her like she was crazy, asking a primitive prisoner to solve their most advanced technological problem. Captain Taemin argued that humans could not possibly understand galactic reactor technology. Their own ships barely had enough power to travel between nearby stars. How could a human fix something that their best engineers could not repair? But Admiral Kehoe remembered Bioram's words about human technology being more advanced than it appeared. He also remembered how the human had improved every system on the station without even trying. Maybe desperation was making him foolish, but Kehoe decided they had nothing to lose. Sekio went to Bioram's cell personally and explained their situation. The reactor was dying and they were all going to die with it unless someone could find a solution. Did Bioram have any ideas that might help? Thembarum listened carefully and asked many questions about how the reactor worked and what the warning signs meant. He wanted to know about the backup systems and what other equipment was available on the station. Kehoe answered everything honestly. The human said he would need to see the reactor and work with the engineering team. He could not promise to fix it, but he might be able to help them find a different solution. Sometimes when one approach failed, you had to try thinking about the problem in a completely new way. Kehoe ordered the guards to escort Bioram to the engineering section. Minho was not happy about letting a prisoner into the most sensitive area of the station, but he was desperate enough to try anything. The reactor had less than 4 days of life left. When Bioram saw the reactor, he did not try to fix it directly. Instead, he asked Minho to show him everything else in the engineering section. All the backup generators, all the power distribution systems, all the emergency equipment that was stored in closets and forgotten. Bioram walked around the engineering decks for hours, touching panels and listening to machines. He made notes on a datapad and drew diagrams that looked like spider webs connecting different systems together. Minho followed him, trying to understand what the human was planning. Finally, Bioram called everyone together and explained his idea. Instead of trying to fix the one big reactor, they could create a network of many smaller power sources. The station had dozens of backup generators, emergency batteries, and even some experimental equipment that could produce energy. The human showed them how to connect all these different power sources into one coordinated system. Each small generator would produce a bit of power, but together they would make enough to keep the station running. The key was making them all work together instead of competing with each other. Minho looked at Bioram's diagrams and shook his head. The plan was impossible. Different types of generators produced different kinds of power. They could not just connect random equipment together without causing explosions or system failures. but Bioram patiently explained how to make the different systems compatible. He showed them how to build simple devices that would translate between different types of power, like interpreters helping people who spoke different languages understand each other. Dr. So-young arrived to help with the project. She brought other scientists and technicians who had been watching Bioram's work around the station. Everyone was amazed by how the human approached the problem. Instead of trying to force things to work, he found ways to help them want to work together. The work took 3 days, and everyone on the station helped carry supplies, move equipment, and follow Bioram's careful instructions. The human never got frustrated or angry when people made mistakes. He just smiled and showed them a better way to do each task. Captain Taman, who found himself working alongside the prisoner, carrying heavy cables and adjusting delicate connections. He had started the week wanting to lock Bioram in maximum security, but now he was learning more about engineering than he had in his entire career. As they worked, Bioram told stories about human history and philosophy. He explained how humans had learned to solve conflicts by finding solutions that made everyone happy, how they had survived on their dangerous planet by helping each other. Instead of fighting each other, the aliens began to understand that Bioram was not just teaching them about technology, he was teaching them about a completely different way of thinking about problems and relationships. Everything humans did was based on cooperation and mutual support. The final day, when they activated the new power network, everyone held their breath. The dozens of small generators hummed to life and began producing energy. The distribution system that Bioram had designed balanced the power loads. Automatic lights came on throughout the station. Computers booted up life support systems resumed their normal operations. The backup reactor network was not only working, it was producing more reliable power than the old main reactor ever had. Admiral Kehoe stood in the engineering section watching displays that showed perfect power levels throughout the station. He realized that Bioram had not just saved their lives, the human had given them a better way to power their station that would work for many years to come. Kehoe was studying the power distribution diagrams, trying to understand how Bioram had made such different systems work together. The human technology was not more powerful than galactic technology, but it was infinitely more elegant and flexible. Dr. So-young was taking notes on everything Bioram had taught them about cooperation and problem solving. She realized that humans had developed something more valuable than advanced weapons or faster ships. They had developed witness. The crisis ended and normal life resumed on Station Omega 7. Everyone looked at their human prisoner with new eyes. Bioram had saved them all and asked for nothing in return. He seemed genuinely happy that his new friends were safe and comfortable that night. Admiral Kehoe sat in his office staring at reports from the Galactic Council about human inferiority and primitive technology. Every single report was completely wrong. Humans were not weak creatures to be dismissed. They were teachers that the galaxy desperately needed. Dr. So-young decided she needed to understand the human prisoner better. She requested private time with Bioram every day for 1 week. Admiral Kehoe agreed because he wanted answers to the whole station was running like a perfect machine, but nobody knew how or why. On the first day, So-young brought a broken datapad that had not worked for months. The screen was cracked and it would not turn on. She placed it on the table in Bioram's cell and asked if humans could really fix things just by looking at them. Bioram picked up the broken device and held it gently in his hands. He closed his eyes for a moment like he was listening to something nobody else could hear. Then he smiled and said the datapad was not really broken, it was just confused about what it was supposed to do. Dowsing only his fingernails, Bioram carefully opened the back of the datapad. Inside were tiny circuits and wires that looked like a mess too. So-young, but Bioram moved some wires to different places and pressed something small with his thumb. When he put the cover back on, the datapad worked perfectly. So-young was amazed. She asked how Bioram knew which wires to move. He explained that every machine has a pattern like a song. If you listen carefully, you can hear when the song is wrong, then you just help the machine remember how to sing properly again the next day. So-young brought more broken equipment, a communication device that made static sounds, a scanner that gave wrong readings, a small robot that could only walk in circles. Bioram fixed them all, using simple tools in his hands, but the most surprising thing was that after Bioram fixed them, the devices worked better than when they were new. The communication device could reach farther distances, the scanner was more accurate, the robot could now do complex tasks it was never designed for. Bioram explained that most galactic civilizations built things using force and power. They made machines strong enough to work even when the design was not perfect, but humans learned to make things work in harmony. Every part helped every other part like members of a family. So-young began to understand that human technology was not primitive at all. It was actually more advanced because it was more efficient. Human machines used less energy, lasted longer, and could adapt to new situations. Galactic technology was like using a hammer for everything, while human technology was like having exactly the right tool for each job. Third day, So-young asked Bioram about the improvements happening throughout the station. How could he affect systems he had never seen or touched? Bioram said he was not really doing anything special. He was just being himself, and machines liked that. Bioram explained that humans learned to think like machines and feel what they needed. When he walked through the station halls during his exercise time, he could sense which systems were struggling He would touch a wall panel here or adjust a loose wire. There are always small things that nobody would notice. The human said it was like being a doctor for machines. Instead of waiting for things to break completely, humans learned to help machines stay healthy. Sick machines made everyone's life harder, so it was better to keep them happy. Commander Hyan-Woo joined the interviews on the fourth day. He brought the security chief, Taemin, who was still suspicious about the human prisoner. Taemin wanted to know if Boram could escape whenever he wanted to. Boram answered honestly that yes, he probably could leave if he needed to. The energy fields holding him were strong, but they had small gaps that could be made bigger. The door locks were complex, but they followed patterns he understood. The guards were alert, but they had routines that could be predicted. Taemin became angry and demanded to know why Boram had not tried to escape. Boram looked confused by the question. He said he was comfortable in his cell and enjoyed meeting new friends. Why would he want to leave when people were being kind to him? This answer made Taemin even more confused. In his experience, prisoners always wanted to escape. Strong prisoners fought weak prisoners, begged clever prisoners, schemed, but Boram seemed genuinely happy to stay and help make everyone's life better. So Yum asked Boram to explain more about human philosophy and how they approached problems. Boram said humans learned that fighting usually made things worse. It was better to understand what everyone needed and find ways for everyone to get what they wanted on Earth. Boram explained. Humans had many different groups who often disagreed with each other, but over time they learned that cooperation worked better than competition. When humans worked together, they could solve problems that seemed impossible. The human told stories about how humans cleaned polluted oceans by working with the water instead of against it, how they grew food in deserts by helping plants and soil become friends, how they explored space by building ships that wanted to fly instead of forcing them through the void. Yunwoo found these stories hard to believe, but the evidence was all around him. The station was proof that human methods worked. Everything was running smoothly and efficiently. People were happier and less stressed than they had been in years. On the last day of interviews, Boram asked Soyoung and Hyan-Woo about their own lives and dreams. Soyoung had always wanted to understand how different species could work together. Hyan-Woo dreamed of commanding a station where everyone felt safe and valued. Boram listened carefully to their hopes and asked thoughtful questions. He seemed to understand their feelings better than they understood themselves. When the interviews ended, both aliens felt like they had made a true friend. That evening, Soyoung wrote a long report about her week with Boram. She concluded that humans were not primitive at all. They had developed the most advanced technology in the galaxy, the technology of understanding and cooperation. Admiral Kehoe read the report with growing amazement. If Soyoung was right, then the Galactic Council had been completely wrong about humans. They were not weak creatures to be ignored or conquered. They were potential teachers who could help everyone live better. Kehoe realized that Boram could have escaped on his first day at the station. The human had stayed by choice, not because he was trapped. The Admiral began to wonder what other things the galaxy had gotten wrong about humans. Late that night, Kehoe visited Boram's cell personally. The human was awake, working on a new art project made from threads and small pieces of metal. He looked up and smiled warmly when he saw the Admiral. Kehoe asked the question that had been bothering him all week. What did Boram really want? Why had he come to this part of space? What was his real mission? Boram set down his work and looked at Kehoe with kind, honest eyes. He said humans had been watching the galaxy for a long time. They could see that many species were struggling with problems that humans had already learned to solve. The human explained that his ship had not broken down by accident. He had come to this region hoping to meet aliens who might be interested in friendship and learning together. His capture had been exactly what he hoped would happen. Boram said humans did not want to conquer anyone or prove they were superior. They just wanted to share what they had learned and maybe learn new things from their alien friends. The galaxy was big enough for everyone to be happy and successful together. On the third morning after Boram arrived at station Omega-7, something very strange happened. Commander Hyan-Woo was drinking his morning energy drink when his personal computer started making soft musical sounds. He had never heard these sounds before, and they were beautiful, like water flowing over smooth stone. Woo touched his computer screen and words appeared, but not in the normal station language. The words were in ancient human writing that somehow he could understand perfectly. The message was a poem about stars and friendship and finding peace in dark places. First, Hyan-Woo thought someone was playing a joke on him, but when he asked the other officers, they all said their computers were working normally. Nobody else was getting poems or strange music from their machines. In the medical bay, Dr. Soyoung was having her own mysterious experience. She had been working on a research project about alien brain chemistry for 6 months. The work was very hard and she could not find the right answers to her questions when Soyoung turned on her research computer that morning. All her data files had been reorganized. The information was arranged in new patterns that made perfect sense. Suddenly she could see connections between different chemicals that she had never noticed before. The answers to her hardest questions were right there waiting for her. Soyoung checked the computer logs to see who had accessed her files, but the logs showed that nobody had touched her computer since she left the night before. The reorganization had happened by itself, which was impossible. Down in engineering section C, The night shift workers found something even stranger when they came to work. The environmental control systems were running a complete diagnostic test on themselves. The machines were checking every part of their own programming and fixing small problems automatically. Chief Engineer Minho had worked with these systems for 15 years. He knew they could not run self-diagnostics without someone programming them to do it, but when he checked the command logs, there were no new instructions. The systems had somehow decided to fix themselves. The strangest part was that the fixes were better than anything Minho could have programmed. Systems were now running more efficiently than they had since the station was first built. The air was cleaner, the temperature was more comfortable, and everything was working perfectly by lunchtime. More weird things were happening all over the station. The food synthesizers in the mess hall started making meals that tasted exactly right for each person. Some aliens liked spicy food, others preferred sweet tastes, but somehow every meal was perfect for whoever was eating it. Guard Captain Taman was suspicious about all these changes. He called a meeting with his security team to discuss what might be causing the problems. Nobody could explain how the station systems were improving themselves. Taman decided the human prisoner must be involved. Somehow humans were known for being sneaky and causing trouble. He ordered his guards to search Bjorm's cell completely and find whatever device he was using to hack their computer. 6 guards went to Bjorm's cell with scanning equipment and metal detectors. They searched every corner of the small room. They took apart the bed and examined every piece. They scanned the walls and the floor and even the toilet. Bjorm sat quietly on his chair watching the guards work. He offered to help them move furniture and asked if they needed anything. He seemed genuinely concerned that they were working so hard and offered to make them tea if they had the ingredients. The guards found nothing suspicious in the cell. Bjorm's small art objects were just pieces of cloth and broken plastic arranged in pretty patterns. There were no hidden computers, no secret transmitters, no illegal technology of any kind. But even while the guards were searching his cell, the strange improvements continued happening throughout the station. The security cameras started automatically adjusting their focus to get clearer pictures. The door locks began opening more smoothly. The lights got brighter in dark corners where people might trip. Taman was getting angry because he could not find any proof that Bjorm was causing the changes, but he knew the human had to be responsible somehow. The timing was too perfect. Everything started happening right after the prisoner arrived. Ya Soyoung asked permission to interview Bjorm again. She wanted to understand how humans thought about technology and problem solving. Maybe talking to him would explain what was happening to the station's systems. When Soyoung entered Bo's cell, he was reading a book about galactic history. He looked up and smiled warmly, like he was happy to see an old friend. He asked about her research and remembered details from their previous conversation. Soyoung told Bjorm about the strange improvements happening all over the station. She asked if humans had some kind of technology that could affect computer systems from a distance. Bjorm listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. Bjorm explained that humans did not have special powers or secret devices. Instead, he said humans were very good at noticing how things worked and finding ways to make them work better. He said it was like being friends with machines instead of just using them. When Soyoung asked for examples, Bjorm pointed to the light in his cell. He said the light was working hard to be bright, but it was not getting enough power. So he had adjusted some wires behind the wall to help the electricity flow better. Now the light was happier and used less energy. Soyoung was confused because Bjorm had not been allowed to touch anything behind the walls. But when she checked with maintenance, they confirmed that someone had indeed improved the wiring in that section recently. The lights in the whole prison block were working much better. Bjorm continued explaining that humans learned to work with technology instead of against it. On Earth, humans had to make things last a long time because resources were limited, so they developed ways to help machines fix themselves and work together. As the day continued, more improvements appeared throughout Station Omega 7. The waste recycling systems began processing garbage more efficiently. The communication arrays started receiving clearer signals from distant planets. Even the elevator began moving more smoothly between floors. Admiral Kehoe called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Everyone reported the same thing. Their systems were working better than ever before, but nobody could explain how or why it was happening. The improvements seemed to be spreading through the station like a friendly virus. Ya Soyoung shared her theory that somehow the human prisoner was connected to the changes. She could not prove it, but the evidence was too strong to ignore. Everything had started when Bjorm arrived, and the improvements matched his explanations about human technology. Kehoe made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of punishing Bjorm or moving him to a more secure cell, he ordered his staff to observe and learn. The Admiral wanted to understand what humans could really do before making any judgments. That night, as the station hummed more quietly and efficiently than it had in years, Bjorm sat in his cell working on new small objects. He smiled to himself, knowing that his new alien friends were beginning to understand that humans had much more to offer than anyone had realized. The red lights flashed across Station Omega 7 as Commander Hyunwoo walked down the cold metal hallway. His heavy boots made loud sounds on the floor with each step. The station was the biggest prison in the galaxy, and today they were getting a new prisoner. Hyunwoo looked at the datapad in his hands. The information made him shake his head in confusion. They had caught a human, and humans were supposed to be weak and stupid. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were just baby creatures who could barely fly between stars. The prisoner, a transport ship, docked with a loud bang that shook the whole station. Captain Taman was waiting at the door with 10 armed guards. He was a big alien with 4 arms and skin like green rocks. His voice was deep and scary when he talked. The door opened with a hiss of air, and 2 guards brought out the human prisoner. He was smaller than Hien Wu expected, with brown hair and dark eyes. The human looked around at everything but did not seem scared at all. His name was Boram according to the files. Boram wore simple clothes and had his hands tied with energy chains, but he walked calmly like he was just visiting friends. The guards pushed him forward, but he did not fight back or complain. He even said thank you when one guard helped him step over a wire on the floor. Da Soyoung was watching from behind a glass wall. She was the smartest scientist on the station, and she studied all the new prisoners. Her purple skin glowed softly when she was thinking hard, which she was doing now as she watched the human. The guards took Boram to processing room 5, where they always brought new prisoners. The room had white walls and bright lights that hurt most alien eyes, but Boram did not squint or look uncomfortable. He just stood there waiting, patient. Lighterman started asking questions in a loud, angry voice. He wanted to know why Boram was near the forbidden space zones and what his mission was. Boram answered every question in a quiet, polite voice. He said he was just an engineer who got lost when his ship broke down. The alien guards laughed when Boram said he was an engineer. Humans could not be real engineers. Everyone knew that human technology was like toys compared to real galactic equipment. Hien Wu had seen human ships before, and they looked like they were made from scrap metal and hope, but something was strange about this human. Boram answered every question perfectly. He never got confused or forgot details. He spoke their language better than some aliens who had studied it for years. When Dr. Soyoung asked him about his ship, he drew perfect diagrams from memory. The intake process took 3 hours. Boram never got tired or bored. He stood still when they scanned him with machines. He held out his arms when they put the prisoner bracelet on him. He even helped them spell his name correctly in their computer system. Admiral Kehoe came to see the new prisoner before they put him in his cell. Kehoe with Walden had been running the prison for 20 years. He had seen thousands of dangerous criminals and could tell who was trouble just by looking at them. When Kehoe looked at Boram, he saw something unexpected. The human looked back at him with calm, intelligent eyes. There was no fear, no anger, no desperation, just quiet interest, like Boram was studying everything around him and finding it fascinating. They gave Boram the standard non-threatening prisoner cell. It was a small room with a bed, a table, a chair, and a toilet. The walls were made of energy fields that would stop any normal escape attempt. The door was locked with 7 different security systems. Boram walked into his cell and looked around carefully. He ran his fingers along the walls and tested how strong the bed was. He examined the light fixture and the air vent. He even looked under the table and chair like he was checking the construction quality. The guards watched him through cameras and laughed. Boram was acting like he wanted to buy the cell instead of being locked in it. Taman said humans were even stranger than he thought. If they enjoyed being in prison that first night, Boram did something that confused everyone. Instead of sleeping or crying or getting angry like most new prisoners, he started working on something. He took apart his prison uniform and used the threads to make small shapes. He broke his food tray into pieces and arranged them in patterns. Da Soyoung watched the camera feeds with growing curiosity. Boram was not just making random art, he was creating things with perfect measurements and careful planning. Each small object he made fit together with the others, like pieces of a puzzle. The night guards made jokes about the human playing with toys to make himself feel better. They said it was cute that humans needed to make crafts when they got scared. Taman said they should give him some coloring books to keep him busy, but Hien Wu noticed something that others missed. Boram never looked at the cameras directly, but he seemed to know exactly where they were. He positioned his work so the guards could see some things but not others. He was always polite when guards brought food, but his eyes were watching everything. By morning, Boram had created 12 small objects from materials in his cell. They looked like simple decorations or maybe religious symbols. The guards did not think they were important, so they let him keep them. Boram arranged them carefully on his table like they were very precious. Da Soyoung requested permission to interview the prisoner. She wanted to understand why humans made art when they were stressed. Kehoe agreed because he was curious to know if the prisoner had ever acted like Boram before. When Soyoung entered the cell, Boram stood up politely and offered her his chair. He asked if she was comfortable and if she needed anything to drink. He acted like he was the host and she was the guest visiting his home. Asked Boram about the objects he had made. He explained that humans like to work with their hands when thinking about problems. He said the objects helped him understand the design of his cell and appreciate the engineering that went into building the station. The conversation lasted 2 hours. Boram asked thoughtful questions about Soyoung's work and her life. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about alien science and culture. He never complained about his situation or asked to be released. After Soyoung left, Boram went back to his quiet activities. He read books from the prison library system. He exercised carefully in the small space of his cell. He continued making small objects from whatever materials he could find. Guards began to relax around the human prisoner. He was polite, helpful, and never caused any trouble. Some of them started to like having him around because he always said good morning and asked how their day was going, but none of them realized that Bjorn was doing much more than just being a good prisoner. Every conversation gave him information about the station. Every book taught him about galactic technology. Every small object he made was actually a tool designed for a purpose they could not imagine. As his third day in prison began, Bjorn looked around his cell with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as he had planned.